video gets to be over 100,000 views, this bike that I'm riding could be one of yours. Alright, so to get this thing going, all you have to do is kind of pedal and flip the throttle and away you go. And there we are, we're on the road. Whee!
So in today's video, I'm going to show you guys step by step exactly how I built this and attached it all to a nearly brand new Schwinn mountain bike. And like I said, it could be one of yours. If this video gets to be 100,000 views or higher, it's a giveaway bike, and I've done a few giveaways in the past, but now that I'm monetized, they can get a little bit better. Anyways, check the description, and here's the build. There's a lot of jokes I can do with that, but for now, we're just going to stick to the friction drive spindle. So what I've got here is an old peg that you can get off Amazon or eBay, wherever else. I cut it just about in half, and I'm grinding the other end flat, just so it looks pretty nice. Now from there, what I'm going to do is cool it off, because this aluminum, you got to be pretty careful with, because you grind on one end and the heat transfers to the other so rapidly. So you got to throw it in some water and, you know, get it to make some confessions, and then you can go about your business. I'm going to take this peg and I'm going to drill it out quite a bit. Now I'm leaving the first 3/4 of an inch of threads in good repair. The other end of the peg I'm drilling out to the same size as the smooth portion of my crankshaft on the Weed Eater engine. That way this can slide right over, and then the threads will bite. I have 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of threads that are untouched on the other end. Once I've drilled it out, I'm going to go ahead and make sure it threads onto a bolt and threads back off. Now this is the same thread pattern as the Weed Eater that I've got, so this will vary from, you know, project to project. So just keep that in mind, for no matter how many specifics I try to give on one of these videos, it is going to vary depending on the manufacturer of the engine, etc. And so you can see the peg here just slip right over and then start threading on. That leads us to our next problem. What we've got to do is slip the peg on and make sure that we don't start threading it on, just as far as it'll slip, and then we're going to measure the distance between the flywheel and the closest edge of the peg, roughly about 1.25 inches here. And then we're going to measure the threads. We got about 1/2 inch there. We subtract one from the other, and all we have to do is find a spacer or make a spacer or even stack washers if you want, just to make sure that the peg, when it's being tightened, tightens up against the flywheel. That way we don't have a loose flywheel in our hands. Once that's threaded in, that should just about squeeze the flywheel on, and you shouldn't have too much threads left to go any further. Alright, and now that you've got the spindle done for the friction drive portion of the motor, we're going to go ahead and take some paper, an old cutoff wheel or anything round, a Sharpie, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make sure that whatever the round thing is that we have kind of matches the same diameter as the flywheel. Now in my case it was about 1/4 inch smaller, so I'm going to cut outside the lines that I'm making here. And I guess if you want to be accurate or whatever, you could use a tape measure, but you know I don't use those much. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and cut outside the lines. Just kind of guesstimating it. It does not have to be accurate by any means, you know, as long as you don't cut it too big, so you don't start interfering with the little bolt holes that you're going to need here shortly, you'll be just fine. So I always like to try it a little bit small first, and I'll trim it out as needed. This is going to be the first most important part. And then next, we're going to thread in our little bolts or nuts, what have you, into the 4 or sometimes 6 mounting bolts that you've got on the front of your engine block. I'm going to push really firmly down over the paper. That leaves me some nice indentations for me to take like a hole punch to, or you could even just, you know, stab a hole through it, doesn't matter, but a hole punch definitely helps because it makes a nice round hole. You can put it right over your marks, and that makes you just a little bit more accurate. So any household, you know, hole punch, it'll work just fine. If not, just stab a pencil through it, call it good. So once we know that all 4 of our holes are all lined up, I'm going to go ahead and just mark any areas that look like they're a little bit close to the flywheel, and I'm also going to trace around generically where the outline's going to be. You know, this could change in the future, but generically I start with kind of a big shape like this. I normally make a U shape for the scooters, but for the bikes I like to leave a little bit more on the other edge of the paper like you can see here. Now I am trimming it out just a hair more. It was pretty close for my likings, and we definitely do not want our engine plate to interfere with the flywheel. They don't like to take up the same space at the same time. So once I'm pretty pretty close to making it, fit on there and everything's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just thread a couple of bolts in. You may have to adjust your holes just a little bit, which is okay because when we drill it out, we're going to drill out the holes to like 1/4 inch or 5/16 and use up some washers. Right there, I'm just marking where the flywheel was a hair close, but the rest of it had a good 1/4 inch to spare. I mean, by an inch or by a mile, you'll be perfectly fine. If it clears by 20 thousandths, that's perfect. You'll be just fine. But if it clears by a 1/4 inch, that's even better. So now we're going to take our paper and make sure that you do not move it around at this point. So always keep a firm grip on it or tape it down, whatever you want to do. From there, I'm just tracing its outline along with the 4 holes. And once I've marked off all 4 holes and the perimeter of this thing, I just like to double check, make sure I didn't miss any portions of it. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and get this thing all nice and cut out. So there's our paper template right onto the metal. And I'm going to go ahead and just use a little angle grinder here. You can get these tools for about $14-15 from Harbor Freight. They're one of the best tools. I used to use a Sawzall for everything, but the vibrations were just killing me. So a cutoff grinder and cutoff wheel, that's the weapon of choice now. And you can actually make round cuts. Up next, with that plate all cut out, I'm going to go ahead and take our punch and a big old hammer. This right here, wonderful hammer. It's a 3-pound pecker with a 1-foot handle. I always like to take my punch and make sure it's kind of centered, then I rotate it upwards. That way I can kind of see the point and know that I'm really, really dead nut center on the thing. So once those are punched out, I'm going to go ahead and go over to the drill press. And this time I'm actually clamping things down, kind of. I mean, I got a vice grip clamp to it. You should be clamping it to the little workspace there, but, I haven't gotten that far. But at least doing it this way, I won't cut myself open and bleed again, because I really don't like doing that too much. Alright, so now we've got our engine plate cut out. It's pretty rough looking. We're going to clean that up with a flap disc, but we've got the nice 5/16 holes everywhere. And this size will vary. Some motors have like a 5 or 6 millimeter screw. Some of them use 1/4 20. Some of them use really small ones. This one here was 4 millimeter by 0.7 pitch. So an unusually small thread, smaller than I'd like, but it should be just fine for our use. And you do always want to make sure that you use all 4 of the mounting bolts. I've seen a lot of people just use the bottom 2 because you can kind of pretty much bridge that with one piece. And of course the engine block always breaks. So utilizing all 4, now that one's a little bit off, but I think we'll be okay. We've got a complete engine plate. Woo, so fun, right? So when I was picking out metal, I picked it out a little bit big. This is 3/8 bar stock. There is no need to have it that thick. 1/8 inch is a little bit too thin, which means that 1/4 inch will be perfectly fine. But this is what I had, so we're going to run with it. I'm going to go ahead and cut out 2 plates that are roughly 4.5 inches long. Now this may vary a little bit from bike to bike, but 4.5 inches should be perfectly fine. I just wish everyone else agreed. Anyways, so drilling holes in it. Look at me, I'm even saving the drill bits. Normally I like to just drill until they start glowing red at the end, but then they don't cut so well. Anyways, we've got 2 of these plates cut out. Hang on, fancy transition, and now we've got 2 plates cut out. Up next will be a stop at the local hardware store of your choice. Mine, the flavor of today was Ace. I'm going to go ahead and pick up 2 1/4 20 bolts that are 2.5 inches long, along with 4 washers and 4 nuts for these 2 bolts. And that will be most of the clamp mechanism that we're building here, utilizing those plates that you just cut out and drilled. And 4, there we go. Okay, time to grab some nuts. And luckily they got a pretty good selection here. I'm using whiz nuts because you can tighten the bolt and they kind of stay put, so you don't need 2 wrenches. I'm also grabbing a 1/2 inch thick, 3 inch long hitch pin. And now we're on the home stretch of the hard part. We got a little piece of tubing here. The little bend at the end is not needed, but I did just grab a piece of scrap tubing that happened to have that bend. I put a little fish mouth on the end, and that helped me raise the engine mount a little bit so it can go up and over the V-brakes without interfering with them. If you have disc brakes, a straight piece will be perfectly fine. And also, here's my little testament to a lot of people saying that welding is really difficult. I disagree. Welding nicely is difficult, so I decided to make a bead, not even looking at the thing, just to show you guys that without any kind of experience, you could just, click the trigger, drag it across, and it will make metal stick together. So, if you don't have a welder, and if you're curious on welding, I highly suggest you pick up a cheapie from Harbor Freight. Now, it will be flux core. I'm using a MIG welder. but it's so easy to learn to at least stick metal together, and it makes your project so much easier. Right now, I've got a shim that also came from the hardware store, that little bushing thing that you see at the end. I went ahead and welded it on and ground the weld kind of smooth because we're going to put a little triangle of steel on the top. That's going to be the pivoting point. Now the hitch pin, the other side of the pivoting point, we're going to go ahead and grind part of the head flat, the side that's opposite of the hole. And as you can see right here, got it all nice and flat so it can lay on one of those plates that you'd cut out earlier. And we're going to go ahead and get that thing all welded on. And that'll be one of the last pieces to do. Just make sure that you're welding on the side that does not have the hole for the cotter pin, as I just pointed to. And if you don't have access to a welder, or if you, just don't want to weld at all, but you still want a motorized bike, if you call around, I'm sure you can find an exhaust shop or a muffler place. And if you cut out all these parts ahead of time, they could weld it up for you. It'd probably cost you 20 bucks. It's pretty easy. And that's our two major components here. Really the only two pieces that needed any kind of welding. Now there are ways you can make this all bolt together, but in this video I was just showing you how I normally do it. I'm going to go ahead and get everything all painted here. Now I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time sanding everything and making sure that my flap disc grind marks are out of it. So I'm just going to cover it with a few pretty heavy layers of paint, and it looks okay. Does it look great? No. But it will work, and it'll work perfectly fine, and look halfway decent. You know, if you're blind or not looking at it directly. So, that's a win in my book. So in my last video, actually the last couple of them, I got a few good questions about the fuel system, so I'm here to answer those. When you buy a new carburetor off Amazon, it comes with that little stone float that you saw, along with the fuel lines and some other little bits. I like to take the fuel line and cut a little angle out of it. That helps you push it through these pretty tiny holes in the fuel tank. There are other ways, but this is how I've always done it. Once you get a couple inches inside there, you can go ahead and take a pair of needle nose and go ahead and pull it out. Now I do like to cut the end of the hose off that I was just yanking and pinching with the pliers. That way it doesn't break in the future. And then this little piece here is a fuel filter / stone. And I called it a float earlier. It's actually a sink. Because when you put it inside there, it sinks to the bottom. That way, no matter what angle the fuel tank is, that thing always finds, the lowest portion of the fuel tank and helps your engine not starve of fuel. The other side here, it comes with that little red piece and just kind of pushes in pretty hard, and you hook your little return hose on. From there, I'm going to go ahead and bolt on the fuel tank. And this here, now the primer bulb side is the return, and the side further from the primer bulb is the pickup, and you got yourself a fuel system. Now the length of the turnbuckle that you're going to need is definitely going to vary depending on the bike and how you build your motor plate. I needed a 10-inch turnbuckle, so what I wound up doing was taking a normal short one and finding a pretty long eyelet bolt. That way it looks still pretty dainty and pretty thin. I could have gotten it the length I needed, but it was 3/8 of an inch thick and also twice the cost. Next, I'm going to need some plastic bushings and a little on and off switch. So I'm going to go ahead and try to reach up here. I chose a terrible day not to wear my high heels. And once that's off the shelf, I can grab it and give them some money for it. And here's the bike it's going on. It's a nearly brand new Schwinn men's mountain bike. It was actually given to me for free by someone in my town. It just needed some tune-up and some TLC because it had been sitting for a while. And it luckily has those little tabs there by the dropouts. So with our parts all painted, our motor bolted to the motor plate, our switch, our turnbuckle, we're going to need just a little bit of hardware and some wiring eyelets and some washers. And we're going to start with some electrical tape as well. Now, I'm going to wrap the electrical tape around the seat stays, making probably 2 or 3 layers in total. You can use a little bit of rubber hose if you want, but that stuff seems to kind of slip out. So the electrical tape, although it makes a mess when you need to get it off because it leaves all the glue residue, at least it stays on there pretty good. And up next, we're going to take the motor mounting, pivoting, clampy, dooey, whatever it is, and bolt it on. Now this may vary from bike to bike, how far apart your bolt holes need to be. That's why I did not offer measurements in this video. On this one here, I had to go up pretty high to clear the V-brakes, so you'll see one bolt landing on the outside of the seat stay and the other bolt in between the seat stays. And that will, like I said, vary from project to project depending on how you build it. But for now, I'm just going to make sure that everything's all nice and finger tight. That way when I slip on the motor here, we can move it around and make sure that the peg is directly in the middle of the tire. So I'm going to go ahead and just slip this right on top of there. No grease or nothing. You can see it all kind of flopping around. And with a good look at it, looks pretty good. I'm going to move things around till the center of the peg is right over the tire, and then give everything a nice snugging up. Now, you don't want to go too tight. I'm only going to maybe 10 foot-pounds, 15 foot-pounds. You'd be surprised how well this clamp actually clamps. You know, it's surprising. I'm also going to take a washer. It does not need to be that big, but that's the one I had most, closest to my hands, and then put a cotter key through it. I'm going to bend the little cotter pin. That way that washer and the pin can't come off. And there we have it, one attached engine to a bicycle. And it can go up and down nice and freely. So up next, we got the plastic bushings and some hardware. Now the plastic bushings are to go inside the eyelets of the turnbuckle. That way there's not a ton of slop. It's not needed, but it's definitely a nice little touch and well worth the $1.50 to me to, oh yeah, that's pretty nice. Yeah, just to have all that slop gone. So from there, we're going to go ahead and bolt it to our engine plate. Now, I did not want to drill this hole until the fuel tank was on, because I didn't want to interfere with anything. So that'll be something you'll have to do kind of by hand a little bit later, or by mocking it up, then taking it back apart. And on this bike, I'm mounting it to one of those little cargo rack mounts. You can also go to the axle if you want, if you have enough there. But it's always nice when they have those extra little mounts down there by the dropouts. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything all nice and tightened up. And with that, the turnbuckle should move pretty darn nicely and easily. Even though this is only quarter 20, there's plenty of strength here, so you'll never have to worry about it breaking or bending, because all the force is just going to be linear on this, just pulling that spindle down right onto the tire like you see. Now, I do have the tire pumped up to 50 pounds, and that seems to be a pretty good number to run with these friction drive type goodies. Now, normally I never run an on and off switch with these friction drives, at least the ones that don't have a clutch, because when you hit the brakes and come to a stop, well, you've stopped the motor. So this is the on and off switch that typically comes in the weed eaters, and I like to save the little pigtail. What I'm doing is I'm attaching it to the spade here, and then also to the little mount on the magneto coil thing, and they're going to go to this back side of the switch. And all you're doing is that little spade fitting you see sticking out of the top of the coil. If that grounds out, it kills all the spark. So technically with the switch that you see there on the screen, when the switch is on, the bike will not run. When the switch is off, it's an open circuit, not making a ground, therefore the engine will run. So that's why I got rid of that little on and off plate, because it's backwards, at least for this use. You can get a little intermittent push button switch, like a horn button switch, that would work out probably better. But the on and off switch, it was cheap, and it looks all right. So I'm going to go ahead and pinch on the wiring eyelets onto our little wires now that I've cut them to length. I like to try to make sure I don't leave too much wiring, but just enough that if the eyelet breaks in the future, you have some that you can cut off and redo it without having the wire be too short and have to move the switch or start splicing wires together to make it reach. So I left about an extra 1.5 inches or maybe 2 inches at most. And from there, our on and off switch is done. That will kill the ignition. Now it's the fun part. It's the throttle cable. Now, I highly recommend that you pick up another little wiring eyelet, because that'll come in handy here in a minute to pinch on the carburetor side of the cable. And I do like to recommend that you use a brand new bicycle cable that comes in like those little generic kits that you find at Walmart, because the spring on the carburetor is not very strong, and you don't want to have a whole bunch of hocus-pocus springs sticking out. I'm also using an index shifter, and as you can see here, I had to make a little mounting plate to hold the cable up above the engine plate. And with your throttle all done, you're just about ready to ride.
We came to a halt. All right, guys, we just got to 22.2 miles an hour. That's not bad at all for a little weed eater powered bike. I think that's pretty good. The absolute speed of this thing. 20 miles an hour. Not bad for a weed eater.
And if you guys are still here at the 20-minute mark, I super appreciate it. Hopefully my videos are turning out better and better, so that way you guys are more entertained or inspired. Even if you're just laughing at these videos, you know what? My job is complete. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And when this bike gets given away, hopefully we hit that 100,000 views. That would be super awesome. Hopefully it goes to a good home to be enjoyed and beaten up and painted and whatever else have you. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one.